What's wrong with me? What have I done? I must be just this way, and this is who I am, and so it's okay for people to use me all the time because that's the way I am. It was the courage for me to say, this stops, and this stops now.
Join us on Thursday the 30th of July for Girl Talk. We will be covering World Sex Trafficking Awareness Day. Human trafficking is a global problem and one of the world's most shameful crimes, affecting the lives of millions of people around the world and robbing them of their dignity. Traffickers deceive women, men and children from all corners of the world and force them into exploitative situations every single day. Human trafficking earns global profits of roughly $150 billion a year for traffickers. $99 billion of which comes from commercial sexual exploitation. Globally, an estimated 71% of enslaved people are women and girls, while men and boys account for 29%. We'll be joined by Reverend Q English of the organization Not On My Watch. Do not miss out on what is going to be an in-depth, phenomenal time of uncovering truth in this industry. Join us on Thursday the 30th of July at 8:30 p.m. on Instagram, Facebook and YouTube.
This is live TV. Good evening.
Good evening. Hi everyone. Welcome to
Girl Talk.
Different directions. Good to have you with us again this evening. We have an incredible guest with us this evening, Reverend Dr. Q English, and she's she's going to be on in a moment. We should be able to hear her shortly or see her. So she's on with us. Reverend Q English is with us.
So we're going to put up on the screen behind us.
There we go.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Auntie Q.
Hi. It's good to have her with us.
Oh, wonderful.
Thank you. You look wonderful too. And I know you are super busy. But I'm so happy that you've taken this time to join us on Girl Talk to talk about this really important issue. For those of you that may not be aware, today is International World Trafficking Awareness Day, and it's not just on the sexual side. There is people are being trafficked for numerous reasons, for labor, for sex trafficking. There's all kinds of trafficking, and we want to raise awareness tonight. And Reverend Q, she has a she's been doing this for a long time. She knows a lot about world trafficking awareness. So we just want her to be on the show with us to be able to help us to understand, and we really want to raise awareness tonight. So in the studio with me as usual is
I'm Danny.
And I'm Laurie.
It's good to have you with us, and Reverend Q English, good to have you with us tonight. So Reverend Q, can probably might be best you tell everyone a little bit about what you do, and give them a little bit more information.
Is Instagram going to be able to hear them?
Yeah, so can you hear me clearly?
Instagram, can you hear her? Instagram, give us some feedback. Can you hear Reverend Q? I'm just waiting for them to go in.
Just waiting for people to respond.
Auntie Q, can you speak just so we can know whether Instagram can hear us as well?
Yes.
Absolutely. Can Instagram hear us?
No, they said very low.
Oh.
Okay, we're just adapting. They said not clearly. Not really.
Okay.
Would it be better from the microphone to the microphone?
Okay.
Okay, that'd be best if you put it by near the microphone.
Near the camera.
Okay.
So near the phone.
the camera.
This is live TV.
Yes.
I know.
Bear with
I
us, guys.
just
We
gotta
haven't
make it
done
work.
this.
Just gotta make it work.
Yeah, we haven't done this before, so we're just trying to figure it out
Okay.
as we go along. We will
We'll
get
get
this
there.
right.
Yeah.
It's such an important subject. It's really important
Yeah.
that we really get this out tonight. How's that now, Instagram? Can you hear us?
They can hear us, but I think they can't hear her. And if
Can you hear me?
Q, can you speak for us?
Yes. Hello. Can you hear me? Hello. Hello.
Okay,
No, that's
yeah.
not where it needs to go. Dominic's talking to you.
Our full sound made in the studio.
We will get there.
Apparently YouTube is good.
Oh, brilliant.
So we're going to keep going. If you can't hear, then just jump over onto YouTube.
Yes, guys.
And you'll be able to hear. That's actually probably the
the
best.
best platform
place
because
to
it's
hear it.
You'll hear everything really clearly.
Yeah. So if you want to jump over to YouTube, if you don't know our YouTube, it's B2B Church. So you can jump over to YouTube to hear clearly. So Auntie Q, can you just tell us about what, for a lot of people, they don't know what trafficking is. So, you know, it's a term that's loosely thrown around. And I think, you know, there's been a real miseducation of what trafficking actually is and what that looks like. Can you just explain to us what trafficking actually is?
Absolutely. And you're right. There's a lot of misgivings when it comes to understanding what trafficking is. And I want to give you the United Nations definition, which is really pretty extensive, and you can more or less go beyond the statement that, oh, when someone's trafficking, that just means that they're selling their bodies, you know, for money. And it is so much more than that. The UN defines human trafficking as the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of persons by means of the threat or use of force or other forms of coercion, of abduction, of fraud, of deception, of the abuse of power, or of a position of vulnerability, or of the giving or receiving of payments or benefits to achieve the consent of a person having control over another person. And it's for the purpose of exploitation. Bottom line, it has to be for the purpose of exploitation. And when you think about exploitation, it shall include at a minimum the exploitation of the prostitution of others or other forms of sexual exploitation, forced labor or services, slavery or practices similar to slavery, servitude, or the removal of organ. You heard Pastor Erica say earlier, you know, there's different forms of trafficking. And yes, you have labor trafficking, you have sex trafficking, you have organ trafficking. But it's really important that you understand what the means of trafficking is, you know, the act, and then you have to understand the purpose. And in this case, the purpose will always land on exploitation. And the means is that of recruitment and transportation and transferring. And then the act would be, you know, the threat or the use of force, right? Of coercion, of abduction, of fraud, or of deception. You know, so that's what we're looking at when we think about sex trafficking. So it's not just a one statement thing, and you have to satisfy something in the means and something in the act in order to land on exploitation. Because sometimes people confuse sexual assault possibly with sexual trafficking. There has to be exploitation, right? So there's an exchange. Yes, there could be an exchange of money, it could be exchange of a lot of different things. So it's a very extensive definition, and I would recommend that that the people that are watching in this international space definitely go to the United Nations, and they have this extensive definition of trafficking so you can understand what you're looking at in order to determine if indeed what you're looking at is trafficking. So it's pretty extensive. So you got recruitment. Can you hear me? You got recruitment. You got harboring, right? And not only and transportation of a person, there's threat, there's use of force, there's coercion, there's abduction, there's fraud, In other words, they're misleading them, they're deceiving them. A lot of times you hear stories of people saying, yes, he said if I would go with him, he'd have a job for me, or I'm going to get this amazing modeling job. And he's got it all lined up for me. And they buy into these ads and with these false and empty promises. And then they end up at the location only to find out they're in a trap house or in a place where they can't get out, and they become a victim of trafficking. And they're very deceptive. And they're very deceptive, and they're manipulators. Those that are the traffickers. And so we really, and I really want to say this, and right when as we're getting started, that we really have to train our children to recognize these type of tactics, as well as our parents, at an early age. And a lot of it and also teaching them how to build their self-esteem. A lot of this, they become victim to a lot of this stuff as a result of not having sometimes this open line of communication in their homes. And a lot of it has to do with the vulnerabilities, right? It has to do with what they've been subjected to. Whether they're in the shelter system and foster care system, whether they're homeless. You do have those that are more vulnerable than others. But at the end of the day, anyone and everyone can be a victim of trafficking.
Yeah. Now there are more organizations rising up and kind of taking a stand and raising awareness. Sorry, we're getting a bit of feedback. Yeah, there are more organizations rising up and actually showing and raising awareness of what's going on. What's your thoughts? Because I know in the media recently, there's been a lot of controversy with, I think it's Jeffrey Epstein, with obviously his involvement in children, and also the taking of them to his island. There's recently been in the media, if people aren't aware, of a company called Wayfair, which is a furniture company. I don't know if you're aware of it, where apparently this was a channel that was being used to obviously traffic children. They would put up, for those of you that aren't aware, they would basically put up items onto their site. So for example, they put a basic wardrobe, a basic white wardrobe up onto their site, and it would be to the value of anything from like 20,000 upwards, or a rug, for example, for $100,000 that was on sale. And basically, when you typed in the name of the item, it was actually the name of a missing child. And this is something that they are saying it was a coincidence, but they have linked the CEO of Wayfair to the Jeffrey Epstein organization. And for me, it's really, I think that it's beginning to unfold. And I think that it's in the process of a lot of things being exposed, because let's just give some facts as to what this kind of industry revenues, because I think a lot of people don't understand the magnitude of what this industry is. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And I think a lot of people aren't aware of the volume of money that passes through hands as a result of selling women, children,
selling human beings.
Exactly.
This is what it is. It's a massive multi-billion-pound industry that is selling human beings. They sell men, they sell women, they sell children, and it has to stop. And just the same way that a lot of voices came together with the Black Lives Matter and it got attention, people have to now begin to speak up when it comes to this and begin to make it more aware. Just some statistics here. Human trafficking is a global problem. It's not just in isolated countries. It is a global problem, and it's happening in our neighborhoods, in our areas. And it's one of the most shameful crimes affecting the lives of millions of people around the world and robbing them of their dignity. Traffickers deceive women, men and children from all corners of the world, and they force them into exploitive situations every single day. A lot of the times when we think kids have run away, it's not necessarily that they've run away. They may have been taken. And it's really important that we understand this. Human trafficking earns global profits of roughly $150 billion a year. That's how much money that they're making from this. 99 billion of which comes from commercial sexual exploitation. Globally, an estimated 71% of enslaved people are women and girls, while men and boys account for 29%. And it was really interesting, some of the countries that the top 10 of this is countries like Pakistan, Thailand, China, India and Bangladesh. They are in the top 10 of countries with the largest number of trafficking victims around the world. India is at the top of the list with 14 million victims that's trafficked each year. China comes in second with 3.2 million victims, and Pakistan comes in at third with 2.1 million victims. And it's really it's just a crazy world. And just because we live in America or we live in the UK or we live in Europe, don't think that we are exempt from it. This is happening everywhere. You have girls going on holiday together. I don't know if you know, it was a movie that they did. It was Taken. One of the movies that they did where his daughter went on holiday, and you know, this guy, can I share a taxi with you? And a lot of young people are not aware of danger. So tonight we don't just want to talk about trafficking, we want to help you to become more aware of it. We want to help you to become more aware of it. So let me give you just 3 types of trafficking that's out there today. The 3 most common types of trafficking is human trafficking, the sex trade, forced labor and domestic servitude. Those are 3 of the most common forms of trafficking. And we want to raise awareness tonight to the dangers of trafficking and what we can do to stop it, and how we can protect ourselves, we can protect excuse me, our young people, our families. We want to explore that tonight. And you know, Reverend Q, is there any way that we can raise awareness, that we can protect ourselves, and even to look out for? Because you know, one of the things, as I was researching this, I realized that we have eyes to see but we don't see, and we can be walking about passing people every day, and we actually are not looking. We're not looking for the signs. Absolutely. And the reason being, we don't know. So we're not looking for the signs to say, is that somebody that's in trouble? Is that somebody that I can reach out and I can actually help? And not just knowing that, but you know, we did a course which tells you how to, if you see somebody that you actually believe that they may be being trafficked, it's not just to go up to them and snatch them yourself and try and make a getaway. But there's a really interesting course that we did that helps you to know how to rescue somebody and everyone stay safe.
So Auntie, what is it that we could do? Because I think for a lot of people, you're like, oh my gosh, this is huge. You know, where do we even begin? You know, what impact can we have as an individual? What is it that we could do to help to A, raise awareness, but B, to stop or to slow down what is happening?
I think the most important thing is education. Education, training. It's like any profession, right? It's for them to be able to master their craft. For example, you'll have somebody that major is a hairdresser, right? When they walk up to you, the first thing they're going to see is your hair. They're looking at your hair and they're even thinking about what they could do to make your hair look a little better. You know, so you've got, and that's because their eyes have been trained that way. And so for me, education and training is real important. If you want to be effective in helping these individuals, it's important that a couple of things. One is you do not put on this Superman cape, right? Because that Superman cape can sometimes make them feel like you're the secondary pimp. In other words, they can feel like you're controlling them just like their pimp controlled them. So we have to be very careful in our approach, and we have to work according to their timeline and their time frame and their processing of their trauma, because trauma doesn't have an expiration date. You can't tell a person when it's time for them to get up, and that's been the problem. Even in the faith community. We want to tell people when there is, you've had enough of being in this state, get up, and there is no expiration date. So in other words, what I'm saying is you have to develop relationship. You don't want to go in and play Superman, because right now that's not what they want. They want to see somebody that cares, somebody that's going to be with them and for them, even if they fall back down, even if they recidivate, even if they go back, when they come back, they recognize that you're that safe place until that time comes when they're ready to create that exit. So I'm 100% advocate for people to become well-trained and well-versed in this area so they don't become the secondary pimp, the secondary victimizer, and the person that they're going to equate you with someone that controls them, and to a point where they'll push you away. It's no different than a lot of times in the domestic violence, right? There's such a overlap in that. I did my dissertation when I got my doctorate. I did it in the area of trafficking, but there was such an overlap between trafficking and domestic violence. And I do want to bring just a bit of clarity that human trafficking encompasses sex trafficking and labor trafficking and the others. Sex and labor is not separate from human trafficking. They're a part of human trafficking. And when we think about it, I just want to hit the stats a little bit more clearly, and then I'm going to continue. But we're really looking like, according to the International Labor Organization, over 40 million globally, are said to be trafficked. And you need to know this, and this is a very high percentage. They're saying that at least 25% of that number, 25% of that over 40 million are children. So we're talking about 10 million children globally. So when you look at, for us, like even in the U.S., we've had, our average age being like 11 to 15 and obviously a little bit higher, but we got to pay. What I'm saying this is that we have to pay attention to our children. We got to pay attention. The next point I want to raise, in addition to education, number 2, pay attention to our children. Pay attention to what they're watching. Pay attention to their conversations. Pay attention to what they're looking at on the phone, because the number one means of media right now is social media. The number one tool that's being used right now to recruit our children is on social media. And so we have to be more aware as parents, as guardians, as Sunday school teachers, as pastors, as leaders in our houses of worship. So for me, it's very important. Number 1, there's education. Number 2, stay involved very tightly with your children's life. Number 3, find local organizations that are doing the work in your area. Sometimes things don't have to be recreated. Sometimes it's about you joining an existing organization and strengthening their mission by making yourself available as a volunteer. And so, those are real important. And I know, Pastor Erica, you asked me earlier about some of the things that my organization does. And so, and this is something that can be duplicated anywhere. We're not on my watch New York. We can do not on my watch UK. It can be any of that. But the formula is this, or the structure is this. It's basically, we make sure that we have directors in every borough. We call them boroughs. You may call them counties or whatever in your parts of the world. But we have people that have gone through training, and with the training, they're sort of like go out to become directors in their respective boroughs. Why? Because education is key. So they have to create seminars and education in forums just like this to keep putting it out there, because a lot of people think it's a third world country issue, and it's not. It's happening right in our backyard. And so that's the third thing I would recommend. It's like creating, if you want to set up like an organization like that with Not on My Watch, getting trained, just having them out there. My organization is survivor led. What do I mean? So those that I have people in leadership that have gone through either trafficking and or domestic violence, because that peer-to-peer piece is key as well, because they can sort of talk their language. It's no different than when you're in the field of criminal justice and you're talking to somebody that just came out of jail. If that person was sitting there and talking to somebody that's been in jail before and have overcome and is doing incredibly well, there's a different type of reception and response to that. And so they become a little bit more open because they understand that you really do understand this piece. And so for me, it's important that at the helm of the organization is that we have people that are survivors and thrivers, people that can actually lead in this space. And so that's another thing that's important. And so I would find myself surrounded with people that have gone through this, come educated around human trafficking, like this World Day, create little miniature events in your parts of the world, become a mentor. Become a mentor, sign up to become a mentor at these organizations, because you're saying, some of you may be saying that's watching this, oh, I'm not looking to start a whole new organization, but I do want to volunteer to help these girls and these boys and these women and men coming out. Call these local organizations, plug yourself in. Obviously, everyone's going to be vetted. It's not automatic, because we want to make sure that the right people are mentoring, taking care of our children.
Definitely.
And so, find out where you can plug in. There may be opportunities for you to volunteer. You may have a gifting in art therapy or in music therapy, and you're saying, you know what, I just want to lend my talent because I understand that therapy or those type of therapeutic activities can heal these traumatic places and help heal these traumatic places of our victim. And so you may have gifts like that you want to say, I'm going to call this organization. You know, I have this gift. I would love to come once a month and just work with art with your kids. I have this gift of writing poetry. I want to work with them to write poetry once a month. I have the gift of music. I would love to come and sow my time that way. And so there's a lot of different things, but my main thing is, number one, education. Number two, find the local organization that you can plug into. If there are none, help create one. Tap me as a resource to help you create one. Tap others as resources to help you create. And number three, definitely let's now start this very intentional conversation right now around our children. That's very important right now, because it's so important when you're thinking about social media, particularly during this time of the pandemic, right? You having all of this talk and if I give you one example, and I'll lend the floor to you, give the floor to you. In New York, there was a time, oh, by the way, in New York, we lost over 3,000 children in 1 year, 2019, to sex trafficking. So just keep that in mind. And I'm talking about the city, not the state, just the city of New York. Okay, so there was an incident that happened, and there's a little boy, he's on Facebook. Or he's on social media. I think it was Facebook, and I don't know how little he was. He wasn't that young. And someone befriended him and said something as simple as, "Oh, I go to the same school you go to," and he was like, and because you don't really see who's behind the picture, right? Because you don't see the monster behind the picture. They are the monster.
Yeah.
And we got to teach our kids that. I don't care how many games they play. I don't care how much Fortnite. I don't care what it is. Yeah. They do not need to have anybody in their space that they don't know personally. Period.
Yes.
And so I don't care if that friends know that person. You're not going to allow them into their space so that you can create maximum safety. So let me finish with this one story. And so the gentleman actually was doing something. He said, "Oh yeah, really?" He said, "Oh yeah, I'll go to your school. I'm in this grade and blah, blah, blah." And he said, so they became friendly. He said, "Now I just need you to share me a picture of you." He shared him a picture of himself. And he shared him a picture of himself, but it wasn't him. And then he said, "You know what? Why don't you share me a private picture? You know, like your picture." And the person did it. And he said, "Why don't you share another one?" And the guy said, and the young boy said, "I'm not going to share it because I shouldn't have shared it with you in the first place." And then the older man said, "Well, if you don't share it with me, I'm going to let the police know and your parents know." Wow. What do you think the boy did? He kept sharing, and he became a victim, and he became abducted. So my point is, they will lure them. They will create that fear. Yeah. They don't have the intelligence to know that they won't be arrested and go to jail, or that mommy won't be like so disappointed in them. They didn't have that intelligence. And it was that simple method, simple conversation that lured them into the space. And it's happening all the time.
Yeah.
And so I really want us to really talk about this social media piece because, you know, even now with the emojis that are out there, you got to learn how to make yourself aware of the lingo, make yourself aware of the pictures, and making sure that you'll be able to recognize it if your children are being subjected to it in their own space on social media.
Yeah.
So
It's really, I mean, we really do have to educate ourselves, and especially with the internet, you know, and especially during the lockdown now, you know, you can imagine so much more. And what we don't realize, you know, they said, you know, like within most people's households, a paedophile lives within a mile. I probably think it's more than that now with the rise of paedophiles. But how much more with the internet? And they don't just live within a mile. They can be right in your house because that every time children, you know, and that's what we don't realize. We're a generation that we let our children, even though they're underage, have Instagram and Facebook accounts. And, you know, there are these predators that's actually waiting, and they know when kids log on. I've seen documentaries where they like when they, you know, to catch these type of people, they'll set up these fake Facebook accounts, and they will watch, and like within like a minute there's paedophiles that's onto that child's, what they perceive as a child, and they begin to talk to them. And that's what we don't realize as parents. We've put this device in our kids' hands, and we have put something really dangerous in their hands, all for the sake of what
Peace
reason?
And quiet.
Exactly.
Yeah, peace and quiet.
And I think that's the reality. We've spoken about this before on Girl Talk, about educating yourself and knowing what your children are doing online. Social media is the breeding ground for predators, and we can't stress it enough that this is where the connections are made. They have to gain access at some point, and the access point is through social media. This is where they groom your children. This is where they prepare them. They know the right words to say. They know all the right things to say. They know how to portray themselves as an age mate or as somebody that's at the same age as them, that's interested in them. You know, if it's, for example, a girl, it could be a guy behind that screen. It could be another girl behind that screen. And don't just think that it's men that abduct children. That's a misconception. It's very much women that also abduct children. I was watching a documentary just yesterday, and it was an Uber driver. He said that he was taxiing three women in an Uber, and he was dropping them off to a hotel, and it was two older women and then a younger girl who looked about 15. And he said he was just listening to the dialogue between the three females, and he could tell that the girl sitting in the middle between the two other women was being coerced. So they were giving her the rundown of what she should do when she got into the hotel room. They said, you know, they used words like donation. So when he comes into the room, you accept the donation first before anything takes place. So he was listening to the dialogue, and he realized, okay, you know what, this girl is being sold for sex. So straight away he done the right thing, and as soon as they exited the vehicle and ended the journey, he called the police. It turns out that one rescue led to another 26 girls that was being trafficked and sold as a result of these two women. So don't think that this is just men that are predators. There are women out there that are also predators. They target, it's like we said, it's a $1 billion industry, and there's so much money to be made. And I think what we have to realize is that it's pure evil.
It is evil,
there are people,
and it's a crime. And it's referred to as modern day slavery. Modern day slavery. That's what it is. It's in slavery. It's rape. They saying that it has exceeded gun and drug trafficking. There's a little bit debate upon that. And why? When you think about it, you sell drugs one time, but you can sell a body 20, 30, 50 times in a day. And so when you think about that, that's why the stats are showing that it's exceeding. It is the worst criminal enterprise in the world.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
criminal enterprise in the world, period.
In fact, they say human trafficking is the fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world. Human trafficking.
Yes.
It's superseded drug trafficking. Like you say, you can sell the product, the person, over and over and over again. And I remember the story, I think, on one of the websites that we were looking at, where it was actually the parents.
Yes.
And that's what's crazy. The parents sold their 6-month-old baby, and it began with pictures, and then they allowed people to come to their home.
They advertised their baby. On Craigslist. And they converted their basement into a studio, so people could come and perform sex acts on their 6-month-old baby. This is real life, guys. Yeah. This is stuff that's really happening. They converted, and what they would do is they were making money from obviously people coming to their property and molesting their baby. And then they were also then recording the footage and then selling it online. So this was another stream of income. This is their own child, their own flesh and blood, their 6-month-old baby. And when you think about a 6-month-old baby, this is it's pure evil. And what I really want everyone to get tonight is that, you know, yes, it is the most disturbing thing that you could ever fathom or imagine. But it's not enough for us to just be like, oh my gosh, this is awful. We're not going to do anything about it. And I think that's the problem, that people get so, oh my gosh, this is awful. Yes, it is. But there's children that's living this every single day, having their innocence and their childhood stolen away from them. They're being used as a sex item. That's what they're being used as. And they're being prostituted day in and day out. And it's time that we take a stand and we do something about it. And we need to speak up, because the only way that, it's like the Black Lives movement, the Black Lives Matter movement. If everyone didn't rise up and speak up, nothing could have changed. And we have to give the same energy to trafficking. It has to be the same everyone uniting and coming together, and the same passion and the same drive to actually end. This is the only way this thing's going to get ended.
And
no, go ahead, Erica. Go ahead.
Just so some of you know this, because some of you may think, oh, this is happening in other parts of the world. In March 2019, that was March of last year, the police in England and Wales recorded 73,260 sexual assault offences where the victim was a child. That was just in England, a small country, in last year alone, in 1 year.
That's crazy. Sexual assault, and we don't know from there, from the sexual assault, how much of that was trafficking. But I'm sure there was part of that. And again, you know, the trafficking would be further defined when the assault was for the purpose of exploitation. And you also got to think about who are the vulnerable among you, and a couple other things that can be done. You think about the undocumented migrants, right? You think about the runaways, those that are missing, those that are truant. Think about those that are in the foster care, group homes and shelters. That may be another place that people can go and do some volunteering. You know, when you think about those that are part of the drug and alcohol addiction, I mean, that whole culture of gangs and crews, and you find more gangs now getting into this, because they do find that they can make more money doing that than they have with their drug life. So there's some different things that you can be involved in, but do pay attention to the vulnerabilities of these kids and children, and then think about how you can help them. I had a parent that's part of our organization that her 12-year-old was recruited by her 12-year-old friend in her public school, and the mother was the trafficker. It was horrific, you know, just thinking about that. And that was right here in the U.S., right here in the Bronx, New York. And so, you know, it's happening everywhere. We can continually tell these stories, but I think your point is that we do have to be a part of the solution now that we recognize what the problem is. And I want to tell you, one big piece of the solution is in the policy, because while we're, you know, taking time to open up shelters and homes and having counseling and having mentoring and creating that, mental health space for our victims, etc. There's also a need for people to become more involved in legislation, because at the end of the day, it's the law that governs the land that is going to make a difference. And so in some parts of the country, unfortunately, and in our country, they're trying to, but it's not going to work. But is a dangerous proposal for the decriminalization and legalization of prostitution. So I want you, those that are really looking at this, we're shifting a little bit right now from, because just because you're being trafficked doesn't mean you're in prostitution. Those that were in prostitution more than likely were trafficked. So I want to now shift a very important conversation on that of legalization and decriminalization of prostitution. And I have to create this conversation because in the legalization and or decriminalization of the sex trade, we're going to see an increase in trafficking. So let me break it down. Some of those are advocating for it. They will say something like, "Oh, decriminalization is going to make it so much safer for us in the sex trade," and it's not true. Let me read this. Let me read this to you. In every country that has either decriminalized or legalized prostitution, violence has increased in every country. And since the controversial 2003 Prostitution Reform Act, the New Zealand government has seen an increase. Now I'm breaking this down so people can know, because I'm going to teach you what you need to do from here, in child sex trafficking, and is a source country for children subjected to sex trafficking within the country. And survivors in New Zealand started to speak up against the decriminalization. So first they decriminalized it, and then New Zealand government said, wait a minute, my trafficking is increasing with our children. And they were like, and now people are coming back and saying, no, we need to, they're coming against the decriminalization. And then February of last year, they had like over 42,000 youth demand that prostitution become illegal. Now, there are some countries where it's not legal yet. And so for those countries that are not legal yet, you need to fight to make sure it does not become legal, not on my watch. And those countries that are legal, you need to fight that they overturn it. Let me tell you this too. Rejecting the criminalization and legalization or full decriminalization of prostitution, a number of governments recognize the harms of prostitution, including across Europe, Canada, and Israel, have enacted laws that solely decriminalized the prostituted individuals and offered comprehensive services and targeted the demand of prostitution. Look at Germany. The German government, for example, which deregulated the industry of prostitution in 2002, has found that the sex industry was not made safer for women after the enactment of the law. Instead, the explosive growth of legal brothels in Germany has triggered sharp increases in sex trafficking, and organized criminal networks thrive. Let me explain that to you. Think about something becoming legal. That means hands off, right, for the law enforcement. That means that industry can become dark. And so that darkness, what's happening is in these legal brothels, that can be owned by pimps. They are now using that as a way to traffic our young girls and our young boys. And so these different countries that originally said, hey, yes to legalization, yes to decriminalization, are feeling the brunt of it. They had to shut down red light districts because of the increase in violence. The age of trafficked children are now younger, right? And then you find the increase in violence. And the studies show that the mortality rates for prostituted women are 40 to 50 times the national average. Wow. 40 to 50 times the death rate. Okay, so it has one of the highest mortality rate. It is a dangerous industry. So you want to know what you can do, particularly when it comes to the law of the land. This is what I want you to do. I want you to call your legislator, elected official, wherever you call them in your country, and stand up against the legalization of prostitution. Find other organizations of like-mindedness that's working against it. Join your voice, open your church, allow them to come, and the church door's not open yet because of the pandemic. Have them come and speak and give you understanding on what it's going to take to overturn the legalization or decriminalization in their country. And then for others, what is it going to take to make sure it doesn't become legal in your nation, in your country? And so that's what we're doing on our end in the U.S. We're fighting tooth and nails that you can't have our children. Because I'm gonna tell you right now, in our neck of the woods, these legal brothels are going to be in the most impoverished neighborhoods, and you know who's going to be inside of those legal brothels? It's going to be our black and brown. It's going to be our black and brown frequented by these white and European men that's going to take advantage of our kids and our children and of our or legal adults 18 and over. It doesn't matter. But I'm telling you right now, the #1 race ethnicity that topped the charts in this atrocity are our black and brown, period. And so what I'm advocating for is that we do stand behind, stand against these legal machinery that is trying to legalize and or decriminalize prostitution.
Absolutely. In fact, they say most sex slaves under the age of 12 years old, their life expectancy while being trafficked is 7 years. Children under 12 years are what's trafficked, and their life expectancy, by the time they are finished with them, their life expectancy is only 7 years, and it's crazy. In fact, they say child pornography is one of the fastest growing crimes. In the US alone, there has been a 2,500% increase in child sex trafficking. So we're seeing this thing getting more and more prevalent, but it's up to us to say, not on my watch, not on. I need to stand up and make that difference. And I just want to share some things with everyone, just how you can protect yourself from this, what's going on, and protect your families. So how can we protect ourselves from being trafficked? Because don't think that it can't happen to you. It can happen to anyone. Because it's not just for sex. Like I said, there are people that are abducted for labour, where they're held in people's homes as prisoners, and they abuse. They're being abused, and they're held captive, and they're literally working as a slave. There's no pay, there's no rights, but they're held against their will. So there's all kinds. And on top of that, there are people are being abducted for organ. People are abducted because they want to take your organs. Because that's another major thing that's going on, where people are being taken and their organs are removed because there's a black market for organs. So how can we protect ourselves from human trafficking? Do you want to give a few points, Danny?
Yeah, so I would say, especially with being vigilant of your surroundings, especially if you're a girl and you're going on holiday to a country that you don't know, you don't know how things work. Sometimes you think that you're safe in a group. You have to be so careful, especially where you don't know the country that you're going to. At the end of the day, you're the vulnerable person in that situation. And I think when you look at trafficking and people that are trafficked, it's usually people that are vulnerable. You're vulnerable in the sense that you don't know your surroundings. A lot of the times you won't speak the language. You're in a vulnerable position, so you have to be very careful and be aware of your surroundings. Don't just follow the crowd. Always make yourself accountable to people. Don't go off by yourself. If you're with a group, don't leave the group. Always ensure that you stick together.
Safety in a multitude.
There is safety in numbers. Don't just take random local taxis. Make sure that they are, accredited. If you're going to the country, find out before you go you know, cheap isn't always the best way.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you know, yes, you may get a cheaper deal,
Yeah.
but is it worth your life?
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
I would rather pay a little bit more. Most countries have a registered taxi service, or arrange it with the hotel for a transfer. Don't just take a random taxi on the street.
And also, you know, many of us today are so distracted. You see people walking, crossing roads, and they're totally oblivious. I'm in the road and there's a car coming, and many of us, we're so busy on our phones while we're walking, and because we're distracted by the phone, we're not aware that somebody could be following us and looking for an opportunity. So don't be, you know, control how you use your phone. If you're walking, be there, be present, present to, this is my environment, I need to take in the environment I'm in. And another thing that I see a lot of people do, men and women, we jog and we're walking down the road and we've got these big headphones on. And the disadvantage with that is you cannot hear someone coming up on you, and you can get abducted and you did not even see or hear because you're on your phone, or you've covered your ears with headphones. So really be mindful of your surroundings.
And just going back to what you were saying about being overseas and not knowing your environment and being vulnerable. A lot of the time, people who are in the environment that you're in are actually in cahoots with the people that could abduct you.
Absolutely.
So they could actually take you away, and you're kind of screaming and shouting, and other people are just turning their head because they're like, well, they're paying the club or wherever you are a portion of what they're getting anyway. So it's kind of, you know, even more reasons to be vigilant.
Well, I think what people don't realise, these things are not isolated cases. They are. There's rings. There's rings that's working together. So usually there's a ring that's operating, and there's different people that may approach you from different aspects, but they are actually working together. So it's like in London when we see these women that's begging with a baby, and that's a whole nother thing as well, you know, because those babies abducted, because then usually when you see those babies, you never see the baby crying, or you never see the baby moving. Is that baby a baby that's being abducted? And I know from some research where those children has proven that a lot of those kids are abducted, and they've actually drugged them to keep that baby quiet. But those women are not working on their own. There's a ring, and they're working, and there's somebody that controls them. So it's really important that we recognize that as well. Avoid walking alone. Avoid walking alone, because by yourself you can be forcibly kidnapped. So it's really important as much as possible. That's why girls and guys, it's really important to know how to drive, because that creates a safe space for you to operate in. So be mindful of where you walk alone. Don't choose to walk down dark streets, late times of night, etc. Just be mindful of that. And if you have to go a distance on your own, take a taxi.
Absolutely.
Also, a lot of girls, they do go out like clubbing and stuff. Of course, a lot of the ways that this happens is through people getting like this, like date rape, drug. So what is your word for those girls about not accepting drink from just any guy in the club?
Well, I think make it a rule. Jerome was saying, you know, girls go to clubs, etc., and you know someone could buy them a drink. Number one, don't take things from people you don't know. Shut that thing down. Don't make that an option. And you know, for whatever reason, don't accept a drink or anything from someone you don't know. Don't allow somebody into your space that you don't know, because when you're looking one way, they could be putting something in your drink, and
there is
don't leave a drink on
and let me just say this.
There was actually a story of a girl that she was abroad, she was on holiday, and something was slipped into her drink. She woke up, I think a couple of days later, in a bath of ice where they'd removed her organs.
Wow.
And she was on ice, and where they'd sedated her and actually taken some of her organs. And you know, don't think that these are so far-fetched that this will never happen to you. I think that's the biggest misconception. Like, don't think that this is so far removed from our reality, because you know, there's predators absolutely everywhere, and they're constantly on the lookout for people that are vulnerable.
Yeah,
indeed.
And I just want to say this. Jerome, 1 second. I just want to say this because I know we're about, and it's girls talk. So PT, this is girls talk, and PT. I want to give you this email address so that, because I know we're short on time right now, but I want to give you this email address: PT, P as in Peter, T as in Tom, at B Boy C Charlie F Frank Cathedral .org. That's PT Peter Tom at Boy Charlie Frank BCF Cathedral CATHEDRAL.org. And I'm giving you that because I feel like a lot of you that may be watching today, you want to go to that next level and get some training. And I want you to get some training because there are different ways that you can look at to further identify victims, whether it's in their tattoos, in their branding, and understanding lingo. We do extensive training on understanding lingo. We did a training at a church, and one person yelled in the back. They said, "Oh my gosh," because she recognized that this was the conversation that her nieces and different ones were having, but it brought her into awareness of that. So awareness and what you guys are doing tonight, that should be continued. And then training on, if you are perhaps, I want to just say these things for signs of physical abuse. If you or perhaps your school-age child are concerned about someone consider these warning signs. And this came from Shared Hope International, that an individual is being trafficked. So you get signs of physical abuse, such as burn marks, bruises, or cuts. Now, when I give you these signs, it doesn't automatically mean trafficking, but it does mean something is wrong. That's the bottom line. Something is wrong. So you'll have signs of physical abuse, such as burn marks, bruises, or cuts, unexplained absences from class, less appropriately dressed than before, sexualized behavior. Pay attention to that. They're withdrawn, depressed, distracted, or just checked out. They brag about making or having lots of money. They display expensive clothes and accessories or shoes. Like all of a sudden, what's going on with this?
Where they get the money from.
Exactly. And new tattoos. Get the tattoos. I back in the day when I wasn't educated, the person had the barcode thing on her neck, and she wasn't.
It means they belong to someone.
Branding.
Exactly. And so there are some things that you have to be educated.
We've run out of time.
Okay, older boyfriends.
Okay,
So
we can
let's
keep
stay in
going.
touch that way.
Oh, we can keep going?
Yeah.
Okay. Are we good
Okay.
to keep going? Okay.
No, we can keep going.
It's just the Instagram runs out in an hour, but we're going to just keep going because it's really important, guys, that we get this information to you.
Also, we have a few questions.
Yes.
We have a few questions. So, Auntie Q, the first one is, I'm really keen to understand the type of age-appropriate language you'd use when speaking with young children, 6 to 7 years old, etc., to prepare and protect them against the dangers of trafficking specifically.
You really have to think about, there are curriculum for that age group. Do you have the share thingy where you can share it with people? Like if I upload something, then you can share it with them, the curriculum, or no? Do you have anything like that in this forum?
We can figure it out. Yeah.
Okay, because
basically,
then I'll send it over to you. Yeah, I'll send it over to you because there is some, and a lot of it is, and they have some wonderful, amazing cartoons that just train the kids to understand danger. This is safe. This is danger, and we're not going to use the term sex in that training, right? Depending on the age, but they're going to get the message through teaching them what danger looks like and what safety looks like, what to do if you run into it. Run to a crowded space, so there's these type of trainings that are involved to help kids recognize danger. And then, you hear all the time, don't talk to strangers, but sometimes it's just not that simple because you have some kids that are like totally outgoing and they talk to everybody, right? But there is a specific trainings that you can do in helping kids to recognize what we know to be predator, right? Because sometimes predators use their doggies to get kids to come over, because and they buy small pet doggies for them to be lured into.
To lure the children.
And so there are some age appropriate training that will help them on a more preventative measure to be aware of the bad guy, the monster. And that's what I would like to share with you. I have 2 links to be able to share with you, and you can share with your audience.
That would be amazing. Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Do you have any more questions?
We have one more question. Well, they've asked kind of in two parts. So the first part is, what do you do when you become a victim of human trafficking? How do you escape? And then the next part is, how do you escape without risking your life?
That's a very, very, very good questions. It all, depending on where you are, there are organizations that have total safe spaces. Like, for example, I'll give you an example here, what they can do here, like in the US. Our law enforcement, actually, and this is something that you may want to advocate for in your own country, or your own city, but our law enforcement actually have a hotline for those being trafficked, right? If you call our law enforcement hotline, they can actually meet you at a location and create that rescue. However, there are some people that I would not call individuals, to be honest. I would call established organizations that, and unfortunately, I don't know what country that came from, but I would call established organizations in your respective country to help. And if you can't do it yourself, and you're given permission to a trusted friend, then do that. It's very, the way one of my persons got rescued or became free, and it's not always typical, but this is what had to happen. Law enforcement showed up at the hotel, had a conversation with her. She did not go with law enforcement because the perpetrator had already threatened that if she would leave, he's going to kill her brother, who she was very close to, and her family members. Now, do they always carry out those threats? That did not happen in this case, thank God. He came to her house. He visited her. He had dinner at her house. He frequented her house. Then he took her to another city and state. The way she got away, because she had the information of who to call, when he went out to get breakfast, she ended up leaving right behind him, running across the street to the McDonald's and made the call. It is not always a safe situation for that victim in that hotel room with the perpetrator. Hotels are now, many of them, and the larger chains are now creating this human trafficking awareness material mandated to be in every single hotel room. So some hotel chains like the Marriott, a different one, if you open their drawer, it says, if you are a victim of, please call.
Okay.
I cannot tell you what safety looks like for an individual because everyone is different. And I'm not going to give you counsel that can endanger them. Every individual is different. And every trafficker has a different, even though they have the same outcome goal, which is money, they have a different makeup mentally and violently, etc. So my thing for you to be is, if you have a connection with her and she calls you again and she can disclose the location and she knows that she'll be safe for X amount of time, then I would create the intervention. And/or I would also give her a number. Sometimes that can create a danger as well, because if the trafficker, sometimes when they find that information, they can use that too against them. So every situation is different. There is no cookie cutter answer to this, but I would say that if you're the person that has the ear of the trafficked individual, keep the connection. Make sure that door never closes. And then when she feels that it's a safe time for her to be taken out of that situation, then bring in not necessarily law enforcement. Sometimes it's the local local area trafficking agency and/or domestic violence agency or agency that deals with girls and runaways. The heart people. 9 times out of 10, that's who they will call. And then once they get into their home environment, which is not publicized to the world because it's private, right? It's a private home. it's a private escape home, they can find that place of safety and create those points of rehabilitation. Because a lot of these victims do not call law enforcement. They will not. They will call agencies that will do the right things by them.
Well, we do have some helplines that we will put up on the screen. We've got, if you think a child is in danger of trafficking, there is an NSPCC number, which is 0808 8005 000. And then we have the Modern Day Slavery Helpline, which is 0800 0121 700. And you'll see some numbers that's come up on your screen. And then we have the Salvation Army, who has a 24-hour helpline for reporting modern day slavery, 0300 3038 151. So there are some numbers there that make sure you store those in your phone so that you can you have access to them, because you never know when you're going to need them, so that you don't want to be searching.
And one of the things that I think was really great about what you said, Reverend Q, was that a lot of the time the perpetrators control the victim through fear. So there's lots of threats that are thrown out there. So I think we've got to get out of our minds that, you know, people are being locked in a dungeon and not seeing the light of day. A lot of these times they're people that mix amongst us. So they're people that we'll see day to day in our shopping centres, you know, when we go out to eat. You think it's not what you think in terms of enslaved in a dungeon and in chains. There is that, definitely. But a lot of the time it is that they're amongst us in society and they're being controlled through fear and threats. And that's why they don't feel like they can speak up. So it's not that they can just run away. There's that fear that somebody that they care about is going to be harmed as a result of them running. So
and it's about just having your eyes open.
Yes.
And a great course that we all done. There's a great person called Tim Ballard. He started an organisation called Operation Underground Railroad on Instagram. And he basically started this organisation in 2013 because he was something was brought to his attention. There was a child abducted in Haiti, and he basically went there and he began this rescue. And they have rescued thousands and thousands of children. They do a great course online.
They actually rescued that baby that we talked about. I think she was about 4 years
old.
The 6-month-old baby. She was actually rescued from her parents.
She was exploited for 4 years.
4 years she was exploited for. And she's now safe.
And they do this for thousands of children. Obviously they rely on donations, so if you feel like you want to do something, you want to contribute, you can go onto their Instagram page or their website and you can make a donation, because what they're doing is phenomenal.
It's amazing.
But educate yourself. You know, I know for me, when I took the course, it takes about an hour. It's a series of different videos that you watch and then you answer some questions. But it really helps you to know what to look out for. If there is somebody that is being enslaved amongst you, it just gives you a bit more of a guideline, because now we don't want to be all vigilant running around trying to rescue everybody.
Exactly.
That's right. That's not what's happening. And I also want to give you a national. I see a lot of international numbers up there, but the national hotline number is 888-373-7888 for the United States. So those that are watching in the United States, there is a national hotline number for human trafficking, which is 888-373-7888. Okay? And then you can also text the word help to 233-733, which is text the word help to the words be free, 233-733. I'm very familiar with Tim Ballard. He came to one of my first, him or his representative came to one of our first national conferences. I think it was the third national conference that we had as Not on My Watch. And was very, very, it was very, very enlightening for those that attended. So so again, 888-373-7888 is the number you call on the national U.S. basis.
So, Reverend Q, the person that was asking the question about trafficking is from South Africa. So I don't know if there's anybody that you can put her in connection with.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I have somebody in South Africa. How do I how do I do? If I get it to you guys, you get it to her? Okay. But yes, we do. We have an organization in South Africa.
Okay,
Oh,
perfect.
excellent.
Another safety aspect, guys, that I would just really want to share with you is to use your phone. Many of our phones, I know we have the app here, the ability here where you can have members of your family are able to track your phone via GPS. So I can't remember the name of the app that we downloaded. There's
360,
Yeah.
Live 360.
Life 360 in the UK. I'm not sure if it's that's the same worldwide, but in the UK it's called Life 360. And if you give that to 3 of your family members, close friends, it means that if anything, for any reason, they're able to track you to wherever your phone is. So those are safety measures that we can put into place. And also, you learn to trust your instinct. Learn to trust that instinct. If you feel uneasy in a situation, in a place, you need to remove yourself from that. Learn to trust your instinct. If you don't have a peace, do not follow. Doesn't matter who's inviting you somewhere. If you don't have that peace, trust your instinct, because our instinct usually will warn us of danger. When another one, meet strangers do not meet strangers in private places. If you're meeting somebody that you don't know, meet them in a public place. Why? Because that's protecting. And can I just say, don't be so trusting.
Yes.
You know, unfortunately, we live in a world today that you just cannot trust people, even a woman. You know, because most of the time our guard is down. If it's a man, our guard is up.
Yeah.
But if it's a woman, if it's a child, our guard is lowered. Because we don't think a woman will do that, but women are doing that.
Yeah.
I remember, in fact, on that. Is it our rescue? There's one gentleman. He's still looking for his little boy, and it was a member of the church.
Yes.
She ran a home,
An orphanage.
She ran an orphanage. She was a member of the church, and the little boy, obviously, his instinct was he was sensing danger, and his dad said he was clinging to him the whole day. He wouldn't go down. He didn't want to leave his dad's side. And for a moment, they're on the church premises, and he sends him to his mother, and it's on the church premises. In that short space of time, that little boy has disappeared, and they're still searching for him today. We posted this out a while ago for people to pray for him, pray for him to be found. But this was a person operating inside a church, had an orphanage, and when they went to the orphanage, they realized that orphanage was being used to traffic children, and being sold. They were selling the children. So just because we're in church environment, don't think even in that environment that everyone is good.
And that was in 2013, and he's still not been found.
Yes.
He was sold through
7
the
years,
orphanage.
yeah.
So let's continue. His name is Gardy.
Yeah.
So please continue to pray for Gardy. Keep him in your prayers.
Yeah.
But we're gonna end there.
Yes. Thank you.
I hope that this evening was enlightening
Yes.
for you all. I hope you feel like you've got a little bit more information and that you're a little bit more educated. Don't shy away from it.
Yes.
Educate yourself, arm yourself with knowledge. Knowledge truly is power. And this is something that we can't continue to be ignorant about.
Absolutely. Is your website not on my watch? Is that the name of your...
I'm sorry, yes, it's nomwi.org. And if you also want to give to Not On My Watch Inc., please do write pt@bcfcathedral.org, and we'll send you the proper linkage. Your donations are very much appreciated as we continue to do our fight here in the United States and abroad.
Thank you so much, Q.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us tonight.
Very
insightful. It was really,
it was
really
great.
honored to have you.
Great
Guys,
seeing my
I hope
family.
I hope you all learned something. There's so much that we didn't even get to touch on tonight, like emojis, and that's what a lot of us parents, the older generation, we don't understand the language that's being spoken, or the way that somebody could be grooming your child, and because you don't understand the meaning of emojis and the meaning of the slangs that they're using, we don't realize how our kids could be getting groomed. So it's for us to find out what those are and educate ourselves on those things, so that we can create a safe environment, keep our children safe, keep our family safe, keep ourselves safe, and at the same time having our eyes open, so we can ascertain a situation where somebody could be in danger or are being trafficked, and find out how we can help them. So our rescue has a training program. You can go on there. Like Danny said, it takes an hour, but it just helps you to know what to do should you come across somebody that is being trafficked, because our natural instinct will be to just intervene, but there is a subtle way of intervening that keeps you safe, as well as keeping that victim of trafficking safe as well, and getting them into a safe place. So thank you for watching Girl Talk tonight. Thank you, Laurie, for joining us. Thank you, Danny, for joining us. Thank you. Thank you, Q. It was a pleasure. God bless you guys. Hope you stay safe. Stay safe. Keep your eyes open. Be vigilant. Don't be so trusting. Until we see you again next week. This has been Girl Talk. Bye.
Bye.